Have you ever really stopped to wonder how a newborn, this tiny little person, goes from a world of just blurry shapes and sounds to someone who can understand, well, everything? Today, we are climbing what I like to call the mind's staircase, which is this revolutionary map of how our brains grow, all created by the legendary psychologist Jean Piaget.
Right. Let's just start with the question that really kicked this all off. How does a newborn, a being that's pretty much all reflex and sensation, eventually become someone who can debate philosophy or, I don't know, design a rocket? This is the massive mystery that Piaget dedicated his entire life to figuring out.
And here it is, his core idea, his big breakthrough. Piaget didn't see children as these empty little buckets that we adults just pour knowledge into. No. He saw them as active, curious explorers, little scientists who are constantly building their own understanding of reality through trial and error. And let me tell you, this idea was a total game changer.
So who is the man behind this whole thing? Well, Jean Piaget actually started out as a zoologist, can you believe it? But a job he took in Paris changed absolutely everything. He was scoring IQ tests, and he got fascinated, not by the right answers, but by the wrong ones. He started seeing that kids of the same age were all making the same kinds of mistakes, and that told him their logic, their way of thinking, was just fundamentally different from an adult's. He realized how kids think, that was the real story.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the brain's basic toolkit for learning. Then we'll dive into the first two stages of development, move on to what I'm calling the logical revolution, and then we'll wrap it all up by looking at Piaget's incredible legacy.
All right, first things first. Before we even start climbing this staircase, we have to understand the tools Piaget believed every single one of those little scientists uses to build their world.
The most basic tool in the kit is something called a schema. The best way to think of it is like a mental filing cabinet. So a toddler has a schema for dog. It's got 4 legs, it's furry, it barks. This is their dog folder, right? And it helps them make sense of what they're seeing. So what happens when that same toddler sees a zebra for the first time? Well, it's got 4 legs, it's kind of furry, so they might point and shout, "Horsey!" That right there, that's assimilation. They're just trying to fit this new animal into a folder that already exists in their head.
But then an adult comes along and says, "No, sweetie, that's a zebra. See the stripes?" And this simple correction forces the child's brain to do something amazing: accommodation. They can't just stuff zebra into the horse folder anymore. It doesn't fit. They have to create a brand new zebra folder. This is where the real learning happens. And this all works together in what Piaget called equilibration. It's basically the engine of learning. See, we start in a comfortable state, equilibrium. Everything makes sense. Then a new experience, like seeing that zebra, throws us off balance. That's disequilibrium. And that little bit of mental confusion is what pushes us to adapt, to use assimilation and accommodation until we reach a new, more advanced state of equilibrium. This cycle is what powers our whole climb up that cognitive staircase.
Okay, we've got our toolkit. Let's start the ascent. We're going to begin with the first 2 stages of development, which are really the foundation for everything else.
And the journey begins right here, in the sensorimotor stage. From birth to about 2 years old, an infant's entire reality is what they can see, what they can hear, touch, taste, and physically grab onto. There's no abstract thought yet. Knowledge is built purely through their senses and their actions.
Now, during this stage, a huge cognitive milestone has to be reached. Because for a really young baby, if you take a toy and hide it under a blanket, it's not just hidden from view. It is literally vanished from existence. But as they grow, they develop something called object permanence, this crucial fundamental understanding that things still exist even when you can't see them. This is the very beginning of true mental thought, and it's the foundation for literally everything that comes next.
Next up, we step into the pre-operational stage. From about 2 to 7, a child's world just explodes with symbols. Language takes off, pretend play is king. A cardboard box isn't just a box, it's a rocket ship, obviously. A banana can be a telephone. This ability to think symbolically is a massive leap forward.
But, and this is a big but, their thinking is still pre-logical. It's defined by egocentrism. They literally can't see the world from another person's perspective. They also lack what Piaget called conservation. So for example, if you pour the exact same amount of juice from a short wide glass into a tall thin one, they will swear that the tall glass has more juice. Their thinking is still completely captured by what they see, not by the logic underneath.
So let's keep climbing and see how this intuitive, almost magical thinking starts to transform into something way more structured and, well, powerful.
Right around age 7, a real cognitive revolution kicks in. The child goes from being totally egocentric to actually understanding other points of view. They go from focusing on just one detail to considering lots of them at once. And, this is the big one, they finally get conservation. They now understand the amount of juice didn't magically change just because the shape of the glass did.
And this brings us to the concrete operational stage. The key word here is concrete. Their thinking becomes way more organized and logical, but it's still tied to the physical, real world. So a child can now sort their toys into really complex categories, or they can understand that if A is bigger than B, and B is bigger than C, then A has to be bigger than C. But this logic works best with things they can actually see and touch.
Finally, we reach the top of Piaget's staircase, the formal operational stage, which usually starts around age 12. Now thinking breaks free from the concrete world. Teenagers can actually reason about abstract concepts like justice or freedom or morality. They can think hypothetically, the whole what if kind of thinking. And they can approach problems systematically, a lot like a scientist, testing different variables.
So, we've made it to the summit. What's the view like from up here? Well, Piaget's theory was absolutely groundbreaking, but like any great scientific idea, modern research has also found a few cracks in the foundation.
Look, Piaget fundamentally changed how we see kids and education. He showed us that children are active builders of knowledge, not just passive listeners. And that is a massive, massive contribution. But we've also learned his stage model is a bit too strict. We now know development is more like a continuous wave than a set of rigid steps. And it turns out he probably underestimated what younger kids are capable of. He also really didn't focus much on the role of culture and social interaction. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle, right? Because learning doesn't happen in a bubble. It's shaped by the world and the people all around us.
And all of this leaves us with one last big question. Piaget's staircase pretty much stops around adolescence, but does our thinking actually stop evolving? I mean, how often, even as adults, do we catch ourselves thinking more like a kid in that pre-logical stage, completely captured by what we see instead of what we actually know? It's a pretty good reminder that the climb toward really understanding the world never, ever truly ends.